It's Sheila here with Creative Aging, a program with the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. Today we are going to do some polymer clay dishes. And these could be used for if you take your jewelry off while you're washing your face, or some people like to make them as a soap dish. It can just be decorative. For keys. And so if you have something in mind, you're welcome to make it whatever shape you'd like. I had one student actually make one for some spoon, like a particular spoon, and so he had to make it a very specific size, and then someone else made one for their cell phone. So please think about how you want to use these, and that will help you with, forming the shape of it. And as you can see, we've got a lot of different colors here. And this is all done with Sculpey oven-baked clay, also called polymer clay. So polymer clay is what oven-baked clay is called. Sculpey is the brand that I prefer just because it's a little softer on the hands. And if you go to any craft store or online, you can buy small squares and pick your colors. And actually, this goes a long way. You could make quite a few dishes with just a few of these. You can also, if you want to do a bunch at home, you can buy a multi-pack. So they have these. They're about $13. Of course, if you go into a store, they always have 40% off coupons. So definitely think about that. And they have all sorts of colors. And so I have a few of these. So I have a bigger variety, so I can kind of show you how to do this today. And so you'll need your clay. We're going to use a rolling pin. This is a polymer clay rolling pin. If you don't have this, I'm sure you can just use something plastic. You could use a cup. You can use just anything that's round and plastic. You don't want to use a wooden rolling pin because the clay will start to stick to it. So this clay warms up the more you work it, and so it will get sticky. So that's why these are plastic. So you're going to need this rolling pin and the clay. And then at the end, you can see most of these have an edge that's painted. And that is just a very tiny coat of any kind of paint. You can use acrylic. This is like a metallic acrylic that I'm going to use. It's a jewelry paint, but you can use regular acrylics. If you just have like a really pretty shimmery gold or a shimmery white, that'll just bring out the rim that you made. Okay, so kind of take a closer look at these. We're swirling, kind of marbling the colors, and we're going to do that by just kind of twisting colors and moving them in our hands. And I want you to think about how the clay mixes is going to be similar to paint. And so a lot of these colors, like the white, will mix in with the pink and create a light pink that you can see right there. And so colors will change as we move this in our hand. So when you're picking the colors for your dish, think about how colors blend. So just think about what you would use in paint. And so if I kept going like this one, if I kept mixing, I only use two colors, so blue and white. If I kept moving it in my hand, the whole thing would have just turned into a light blue. The white would have disappeared. So as you'll see, we're going to do one together. As you'll see, I'll move one quite a bit so you can see how the colors blend and kind of fade. So this one was just purple, a gold, and a white. And see how many shades of purple came out? And then even the gold, see how bright that gold is there, and then it's really light there. So the colors will change, and that's what makes these really fun and interesting. All right, so let's get started. Now with polymer clay, you always want to warm it up, and I've already done that. So I'm going to have a few colors, but so I have a white. And, it comes in a block, and this is really hard, okay? So you have to warm it up quite a bit. So when you open your package, you'll pinch a little bit off, and you're going to just work it in your hand until it feels soft. Sometimes you just need to hold it for a while, soften it, and then start moving it. And you can warm it up however you want. If you prefer to just hold it, if you want to really move it around. No need to like hurt your hands over this. It shouldn't, cause any tension in your fingers. So don't have to be aggressive. You can just hold it and the heat of your hand will get it softened. So let's pick a couple colors. I have this really pretty turquoise I want to use. It's got a little sparkle in it. So I'm going to try this. And of course, sometimes, you just don't know how they're going to turn out. This is a good project for just playing and working your hands. And I'm going to use, this is interesting. I've never used this color, but I found it in this set, and it's kind of like a bronze. And this one's really hard, actually, so I'm going to move this around. So I'm going to use this, and then I'll use a lot of white. Okay, so once you have your clay warmed up, you're going to make coils. And so think about, start smaller because you can always add color. And so I'm going to use a little more white because I like how the white blends with other colors. So it's going to create new shades of blue, and it might change this bronze. And so I'm going to use a lot more white, and I'm just going to use a little bit of the other two because I can always add more. It's harder to take away. So just go ahead and look at the size of these. I'm going to roll them in balls so you can see. Okay, so once you and keep them separate. And what we're going to do is just roll it in your hand. And it's like a snake, but this is called a coil. Set it aside. Do that with the next color. Okay, and they don't have to be the same size. There's really no right or wrong. We just want to swirl the colors together, so that's kind of like braiding. So it doesn't matter if they're all perfectly the same length or the same size, or you kind of want to get them there, but you don't have to stress out about it. So then I have them all separate, and I'm just going to use one hand, and I'm going to pinch, and I'm going to twist. Okay, twist all the way down. So we're just intertwining these colors. All right, and so see right there, I'm just going to keep twisting. And at this point, so let me show you, if I do not swirl this around in my hand and move the colors, let me show you what it looks like. And with these rolling pins, you don't have to push really hard. I'd rather you be softer and flip it so it gets stuck to the table. If you keep moving it, it's going to warm it up and it'll get stuck to the table. So I want you to flip it every couple rolls and roll it to the shape that you like. And this one, I'm just showing you because this is probably not going to be what you want. So see, the colors have not blended at all. And so if you want to make it like this, you can, for sure. But I think you should definitely keep going and play just so you can see how it's going to turn out. Okay, so now let's move it just to see how different it's going to look. And I'll do it slow. So even if I just take my finger and move some of the clay around, you can have total control of how this is going to look. So you can see them blending. So you can actually do it slow and really look and figure out if you want it to kind of spread a certain way to have a formation. You can do that. It's kind of looking earthy. Or If you want to just move it around in your hand, you can do that as well. So, but don't move it too much, because remember, if you move it, it's just going to blend and blend into where it's just going to be super faded, and you're not going to see all the colors. They're all going to blend into each other. So at this point, let's roll it out and let's see what this looks like. So remember, be mindful of the shape. Flip it. So if you want a long one or if you want a circular one, right now it's already kind of coming out as circular, so we'll just keep doing that. But if you have something in mind, this is where you'll kind of make your shape. So that's what that looks like right now. And if you love it the way it is, and if you're happy with it, then you can continue with the edges. And you could lift your edges. So if you like this, you can leave it and work on your edges. And that's done by just being gentle. Watch the fingernails. And you're going to gently move the clay. You can do this a few ways. You can go underneath it and kind of push it. And these are supposed to be kind of organic, so they don't have to be perfect. It looks pretty, like kind of like a seashell. Of course, if you want to do, you measure it out and have, you know, a certain way, you can do it however you want. But so this is kind of gently just pulling, moving them around. You can also use one hand and hold it. And you can actually pinch. If you want it to be really exaggerated, kind of like a lot of people have probably done a pinch pot. This is the same thing. You just go underneath it and pinch. So I actually want to add more color just to show you. So if you don't like this design, and remember, you have two designs. You have the top and the bottom. So figure out which one you like, and then that could be your top. But I actually don't like either of these. I don't think the colors turned out that pretty. I think it could look better. So I'm going to add more color. So this is where you decide if you want to add more or if you want to leave it as is. I'm going to add more of the blue. And I want mine to be a little bigger too. So, you know, think about the size of it, how big you want it. And that would have been, you know, about the size of my fist. That wasn't too big. So I'm going to do the same thing again. Let's add a little more blue. I'm going to make the coils, twist them. And you can do this as much as you want. If you wanted to add a little more white too, let's do that. You could do that. So add more white. Got two coils, twist them. So now this is very colorful. And you can see how many different colors I already have. Now if you want it to look stripy, you could, if you don't want it to look like marbly and you don't want to roll it around your hand, you want kind of more stripes, you could leave it like this and kind of push it down. So then there's still the stripes. And I'll roll it out again. Flip it. And remember, you want even pressure, otherwise you're going to have kind of lumps. Okay, so I see I'm rolling really gently right now just to get all of this even, because I don't want it to be divot. You know, you don't want the marks to show. So I'm just being very careful. And I saw a bubble, so I'm rolling over the bubble. When you're taking it off, be gentle that it doesn't stick. If it does stick, you can get something flat and lift it up, but hopefully you're flipping it and it shouldn't get stuck. So that's what that looks like now. It's pretty. Let's look at the other side. I like that actually. If I wanted to continue moving it in my hand, I could and make it more marbly. But I really do like how this stripes came out, and I think it's an interesting design, and I even like the shape. If you don't like the shape, you can move it with your finger. If this is too organic for you, you can move it. But at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lift my edges. And so right here, I just usually take the first, the one sticking out the most and start with them, but there's no right or wrong way. And this has already got like a groove in it, so I'm just going to exaggerate that groove. And the paint at the end will really bring out your edges. And remember, this is where you have to be careful if you have long fingernails. I don't really have long fingernails, but I do have fingernails and they can still make marks. So notice how I'm using this part of my finger. Because if you use this, you're going to have lots of little claw marks, and it's a lot more work to smooth them out. Some of you will have those marks, and we're going to smooth them out later, but just try to be mindful while you're working this clay so you don't even have to do that step. Save yourself some time. So see how slow I'm going? I am not rushing this at all, and I'm really looking and stopping in between to see if I like it. So don't rush anything with clay. That's when you're going to get an outcome that you're not happy with, and that's when you're also going to have little marks that you have to smooth out. So every so often, stop and look at what you're doing and think about if you like it. Because you can always keep going and add more color or change the shape. This is easy. It's easy at this point to change it. It's not easy later once. You can't do anything once it's baked. It's going to be that way forever. So you might as well figure out exactly the way you like it. And I also, so I start when it's flat, and then I like to hold it so I can really see the edges. So I want to look at all of it, because all of this is going to show if it's on a table. And so right there, see, I'm just using my finger and pushing it in there to see how it created more of a, it's not so gradual. So I like using both. So I like really, gradual grooves, and then I like one that's kind of more interesting, and this is good learning anyways, just to kind of play with clay and figure out how to move it and how to get it to do what you want. Okay. So that's how that's looking, and see how the color on the edges, on the bottom it shows too. So that looks really pretty. It definitely changed forms from the last time. And then there's the bottom, of course. That could have been the top if you wanted it. So make sure you always have two sides. Make sure the one that the top is the one that you like. At this point, I'm going to make sure that everything is smoothed out. Look closely. See if there's any little bubbles or anything that you're not liking. Fingernail accidentally slipped. Maybe some of the clay didn't get blended very well and you want to move it. Smooth it out a little bit. So this is where you do all of the little tiny details. And then once you love it, I want you to bake it. So the directions are always on the Sculpey packages. You're going to bake them at 275. You can use your regular oven or you can use a toaster oven. It's totally up to you. And if you use your oven, I would recommend maybe a cookie sheet and lining it with foil. And then that way that's not touching anything that you're going to actually eat off of. This is non-toxic, but I still think it's good to keep it separate. I have a toaster oven that I just use for polymer clay projects. So if you do a lot of polymer clay at home, I recommend buying a toaster oven, and then that way you can always have that and use it, and they're pretty inexpensive. And so just gently lift it up, carry it, and put it flat on the toaster oven. And really at this point, you really have to be careful because one wrong move and you can ruin this. So be very careful when you're picking it up. Don't let your fingernails cut into it. Put it right on the tray, bake it at 275 for about 12 minutes. When it comes out of the oven, remember it's going to be really, really hot. So, if this is the only thing you're baking, you might want to leave it in there to cool so you don't even have to touch it. If you want to take it out right away, you can use, just a flat anything to take it out and set it. But don't be alarmed because it's gonna feel like it bends. So it doesn't harden until it's totally cool. And so you might take it out of the oven and think that it's not finished, but it actually is. So it's gonna feel like fragile, like it's not cooked all the way. But as it cools, it will completely harden. But while it's cooling is the only time that it's gonna break. It's very fragile while it's cooling, so if you handle it wrong or if you move one side, it's going to crack. And you could glue it back together, but I just recommend not even touching it while it's cooling. Give it about 5 to 10 minutes. Then once it's completely cooled, it will not break. These things are really durable. I've dropped so many and they never break, so they're pretty amazing. This stuff is great. So I'm gonna go bake mine and I will come back and we will paint. Okay, so I have this out of the oven and I gently transferred it to a paper plate and I'm gonna let it cool for a few more minutes. Make sure that it's completely cool before you paint it because you don't want to touch it because it's still hardening and it's fragile. You also don't want to paint when it's hot because the paint doesn't like heat and so it'll start getting gunky and it just won't look good on your edges. And so while we let that cool, let's go back and look at these other ones so you can see the difference in how you can create maybe the shape. And so again, this one is stripy and so I marbled it just like I did this one. I marbled it and then I added more color and then it had so many colors I left it twisted and rolled it out so it kind of had more of like a stripe design. And then the edges, all these edges are lifted. So I just kept moving my finger all the way around it so that this kind of looked, I wanted it to look like an amethyst agate stone. And so I lifted all the edges just to get, be a totally different dish shape. This one you can tell was just kind of random, moved around, marbleized. Gives a pretty design. And then you can see almost exactly where my fingers went. I just pinched it from underneath all the way around. Sometimes I pinched, see right there? I went in and pinched pretty hard to where they're almost closed together. And this one's for my OSU fans. So you can do sports teams. If you have a person that loves a sports team, you can do those colors, or you can school colors. You know, you can make these as gifts. These are really fun gifts. Everybody can use a little dish. Okay, and remember this has a pearl edge. These are all gold. I wouldn't recommend that many other colors. I think the paint can take away from this, so I don't, be very mindful. You don't want the paint to be the focus. It's just supposed to accent your edges and the work that you did. And of course, if you don't want an edge at all and you love it just as is, then don't paint the edge. But let me just show you quickly, if you do want to paint an edge, how to do it. So I have just metallic acrylic paint. It's got a super shimmer. Just a little bit. You don't need much paint. A small brush. And I'm just going to get paint on the end. And I personally like to hold it and kind of let the edge just get the paint. And so when you use a little brush, you're going to have to dip it in the paint more often. And so remember, you can do a tiny edge. You can do the entire. You can go all the way down. That's up to you. I mean, so if you want to leave it flat, you can do that. I just think that when you're painting this way, your hands get more shaky. That's why I suggest maybe holding it and just letting at an angle, the brush will just hit the lip of it automatically. So you don't even have to strain your hands or worry about your hands getting shaky. This is just going to make it look a little bit more elegant. So see the difference already? So go all the way around. And of course, if it's too dark, you can always use a paper towel and lighten it. And you can use a lighter coat. You can also use a lighter gold. This one is actually more of a bronze. I really like the lighter golds, but I didn't have any. So it's up to you. I think this color of gold looks pretty with the blue. So it depends on what color you use as well. The light gold might look better. The pearl might look better. I definitely think about what's going to complement my dish. And if you wanted, I mean, you could go all the way down here. I don't really recommend it because I think the colors are so pretty. I like the colors showing. So I'm going to leave it. And I did that very fast. I want you to be way slower. So don't rush that part. But you get the idea. There's going to be pictures attached under this video. And so feel free to look at those. And I'll make sure to put these dishes in the photos. And I hope you have fun and find this relaxing. It's a good little stress release, and you can't really go wrong. This is a good project for beginners or perfectionists because you can't really mess these up. I mean, you can blend too much to where your colors will get muddy, but you can always add more color and figure it out. So enjoy it, and I'll see you next week.